Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. I'm your host, the Dividend Aristocrat, and today we're going to be talking about a brand new milestone that I just hit on the channel. I've been waiting to hit this milestone for quite some time, and I have talked about it in some of my previous videos, and I'm super excited to be able to talk about it today. Now, I originally had another video planned for this week, but you guys will have to wait till next week to see that one. Now, if you haven't already figured it out from either the thumbnail or the title of this video, I recently surpassed the $50,000 mark on my taxable portfolio account. Now, I know for some of you guys and for some bigger investing YouTubers out there, this is not that big of a milestone, but for me, it's a very big deal, and I'm so happy I was able to hit it this year. Now, I've been working for a while to hit this goal, and in this video, we'll take a look at how long it took me to hit $50,000 in my portfolio value, how much I invested to get here, what companies I invested in, the frequency at which I was investing, some of my general investing strategy, and what my plans are going forward. If you guys are into this type of content, consider subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. As a reminder, this is not financial advice, and I'm just merely sharing my opinions on this channel. And real quick, if you guys are interested in my future value calculator that I use in my videos, join my Patreon. It's currently free, and you can download this spreadsheet for yourself for free. I had somebody reach out who was a little confused on how to use the spreadsheet. There are instructions on the first page, but all you have to do is just make a copy of the spreadsheet and then you can use it for yourself in any of your Google Sheets. So as we can see on my portfolio dashboard, in total I invested $36,027.40 in order to get to this $50,170.17 portfolio value. So the majority of the $50,000 portfolio value is of course for my total invested. You need capital in order to make money, and for me I had to invest $36,000 to get here, but I still had a pretty high total return with a 39.26% total return or a $14,142 unrealized gain. Now, because of my diligent investing and of course some favorable outcomes in the stock market, we've been able to hit this goal pretty quickly. In total, I've earned $1,479 and I've been very disciplined with this money, reinvesting all of it back into the holdings that paid it out. Going forward, I'm projecting to be earning $803.20 per year, with my portfolio yield being at 1.6% or a yield on cost at 2.23%. Now, as my portfolio has gotten bigger, my days change has much more affected my portfolio value. So you can see right here that a 0.88% increase is actually equivalent to a $435 increase in my portfolio value. Now, the daily, weekly, and even monthly movement of my investment portfolio don't actually matter to me, aside from when I'm trying to hit these little goals so that I can post about it and talk about it. But long term, it's more important to be able to continue adding this portfolio and continue seeing that improvement in the long run. If some of my holdings were to decrease in value over the next couple months, I would not care too much as long as the fundamentals remain strong and the companies remain resilient, and I would continue investing into my portfolio regardless. My cash position currently sits at about $10,186, and I do think that it's a bit lower than that right now, but I haven't yet updated it. But if I were to deploy all this cash, we would actually have a $60,000 portfolio value instead, so I'm not including this $10,000 into my calculation for my portfolio value. In total, I hold 24 different holdings, but I want to reduce the amount of holdings very significantly this year. We'll see if I'm able to do it this time around. Now, this graph right here just helps illustrate my total invested versus my portfolio value, and it's nice to take a look and see how much it's increased over time. Now, if you guys are curious about my holdings in the portfolio, we'll take a better look at it in a second, but you can see right here I do have a pie for my weight by holding, and I also have a pie for my sector weighting by value. Now, the first thing I want to show you guys is down here, and this really helps illustrate how I hit these goals. So it's my amount invested and my dividends received every year since I started investing into this portfolio. This is the single most important thing that helped get my portfolio value to where it is right now. In 2020, I invested my first batch of money into the portfolio, and I invested $2,809.62 into VOO. Now, this was towards the end of the year, so I don't really consider 2020 as a year of itself. Realistically, I would say I've been investing for about 4 years or a little over 4 years. Now, in 2020, I only received $12.45 worth of dividend income. But following that, in 2021, I invested a little bit more at $3,122, and that's because I did not have that much money sitting aside to where I could invest in the portfolio consistently. That same year, my dividend received actually increased by a significant margin because I had 4 different quarterly payments from VOO, and of course my position in VOO increased as well, so I got $76.18 worth of dividend income that year. Now, 2022 is the year I started investing in not only ETFs but also individual holdings, and because of that, the amount I invested went up pretty significantly, and I had also more money on the side in order to invest in the portfolio. That year, the market had a pretty significant correction, and I invested $10,262 into the portfolio, taking advantage of all those dips on all those heavy tech companies. To this day, 2022 is still my highest year in terms of how much I've invested into the portfolio, but I can assure you guys that 2025 will greatly surpass this. Now, that year I earned $191 with dividend income, and you guys can see the steep increase right here. We see 2022 was at least double of what 2021 was, and as we continue on, you'll see how much it increased since then as well. In 2023, I invested $9,759, and there was a little bit less opportunities, but in October of 2023, I bought a lot of different companies. That year, I received $459 worth of dividend income and I reinvested that back into the portfolio. Now for 2024, I invested $10,076 and this is the year we just completed. And if you guys want to check out my recap for 2024, check out my December dividend income video, which covers some of that aspects, and also my portfolio goals for 2025, where I cover how we did in 2024 and also my goals going forward in 2025. And I'll pin both these videos right up here. This past year, I earned $729 and we're really making progress towards that $1,000 a year goal and soon that $1,200 a year goal, which will be $100 per month. Now in these next 2 weeks, I do have to add another row right here for 2025 and of course another bar to this graph. It'll be much lower than the 2024 one for now. By the end of the year, I expect it to surpass this amount by a decent margin. Now all the stocks that I've contributed to my dividend payouts are listed right here, and the most significant ones are VOO, SCHD, Altria Group, Texas Instruments, United Health, and soon Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a newer holding of mine. Going forward, I expect these companies to not only pay a lot out in dividends, but also to raise their dividends consistently. So I do not want to bore you guys too much, but I do want to show you real briefly my order history section. This is what populates all the rest of my spreadsheet. What I really want to show you guys here is how I keep track of my investments, but also how consistency pays off over time. So that original purchase I was talking about is right here, the 9 shares of VOO at $312, which gives me a total order of $2,809. Now following that, I kept buying some shares of VOO here and there, and then eventually I bought my first couple of shares of SCHD. And let me remind you guys, SCHD recently had a stock split. If you want to see my video talking about that, I'll pin it up here. But I originally bought, I believe, 10 shares of SCHD, and because of the stock split, I had to go back and fix all the purchases to show 30 shares at a lower price. Now post stock split, my purchase was equivalent to 30 shares of SCHD at $24 a share for a total order of $733. Now I continued buying VOO and SCHD here and there, and then in 2022 I started buying some individual companies including 3M, Google, MasterCard, Microsoft, and Visa. Now this was just me dipping my toes into the world of individual stock purchases, and you can see right here I was very hesitant with buying Google only at 1 share at $100 per share. Now over time, of course, my investments did increase, but at the beginning I was only buying individual shares of companies at very small amounts. If we scroll down a little bit, I'll be able to show you guys some of my bigger purchases, and they were in 2023. We can see they're a little bit out of order. Unfortunately, I had October purchases here for SCHD, and then I forgot to add some purchases in here for S&P Global, Target, and Texas Instruments. But right here, you can see I purchased a much larger position in SPGI. I think it was like $1,800 worth. And for Texas Instruments, I was really loading up in the end of 2023, probably closer to $2,100 worth of Texas Instruments. Now this is when I started investing a little heavier into companies. I realized I didn't want to hold such small positions. I originally had positions that were about 1 to 2% of my portfolio value, and I decided that it wasn't really worth my time buying such small individual positions. I wanted the impact of individual holdings to be more meaningful, whether they went up or down, and because I try to make my positions at least 2 to 2.5% each if I'm going to make a new position. Realistically, the companies I have conviction in, I really want to be buying closer to 5 to 6%, but that doesn't always happen because sometimes the stock price goes up a little bit faster than I would like and I can't fully form out my position. Now in 2024, I invested almost exclusively in individual companies, I think with just some purchases in both VOO and SCHD, but as you can see right here in 2025, I'm changing up my investment style just a little bit. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you guys want to see my detailed investing plan for 2025, check out my last video on the channel where I talk about that. But right here, you can see I've been buying SCHD and VOO on a weekly basis to give you a little hint. Now short term, there might be some poor performance because of this, because SCHD and VOO are both trading a little bit rich right now, but over time it should be fine in the long run. Now real quick, in my portfolio I also keep track of dividend income, and we'll scroll all the way up to the top so we can first see my initial dividend income for VOO at $12.45. Now this was one of my smallest dividends for VOO, and because I kept increasing the position size, my dividend increased as well over time. If we scroll all the way down and check out how much VOO is paying me now, it's a significantly higher amount. They paid me $49.28 in December of 2024. Now as I add more into this position this year, I hope that this number will continue climbing up aggressively. Now another thing that I try to keep track of in this spreadsheet is my money market dividends, and that's just the dividends that I'm getting paid for holding the money market fund in my portfolio. Any extra money that I have sitting around that's not invested gets automatically put into VMFXX. It's just basically the settlement fund, and they pay out a small percentage of yield. Now in 2020, the yield was much lower and I did not have a lot of money sitting aside, so that's why these numbers are so small. But as the yields increased, we can see right here how it climbed significantly, all the way up now to $25 in 2024, and towards the end of the year, it was closer to $37.30. Now over time, this amount will probably go down as I invest some of the money that's sitting aside and the rates continue to decrease. Just to clarify, this amount is not included in my dividend calculations. When I say I made $1,400 worth of dividend income, for example, I'm not including the money market dividends. That's just for my personal portfolio tracking. The next thing I want to go through is my pies section of my spreadsheet, and it kind of breaks down my portfolio into several different pies. The first one here shows the breakdown of my key to success section, divine dividends, and my miscellaneous section, as you can see right here, and it shows my portfolio value at $50,170 and my cash position at $10,000. The next one right here breaks down cash as a proportion of stocks, which is 16.9% cash and 83.1% stocks. This is a little bit higher than what I want to see it at, so I am looking to invest a lot of this cash into different holdings over this next year. So my key to success is actually sitting lower than the target allocation, my divine dividends is sitting higher than the target allocation, and my miscellaneous is sitting lower than target allocation, but just by a little bit. So these pies help show some of the breakdown, but if we click the slices button, it'll show a much more detailed overview. So right here, my key to success section is made up of VOO and schd, and those are the foundations of my portfolio, and they're a very big proportion of the portfolio. The divine dividend section holds blue chip dividend paying companies, and you can see all the companies right here. Finally, we have the miscellaneous section. It's a smaller section which has some more speculative plays, as well as those that don't pay dividends or have less consistent dividend payments. In this case, 3M and Intel Corporation both cut their dividends. 3M still pays a dividend, but Intel is actually not paying a dividend going forward, at least for the time being. Now, anything in red is actually on the chopping block, and anything in yellow is one that I want to hold either one or the other. I find that Lowe's and Home Depot are a little too similar, so I'd rather just hold one of the companies, and that way I can have less holdings in my portfolio. Now going into my holdings section of my portfolio, let's take a look at which companies make the most impact on my portfolio value. This will hopefully help you guys understand how I got to this point and which companies make up the majority of my portfolio value. So scrolling to the right, we can see a couple important factors here. We have the amount invested, the current value, the change, which is my gains in terms of dollar amounts, and my percent change, which is my total return in terms of percent. My top 3 positions right now from largest to smallest are actually VOO, SCHD, and Booz Allen Hamilton, even though Booz Allen Hamilton is in the red. Moving to the right real quick, I just want to show you guys that I do keep track of my allocation for each position in this furthest column right here, and VOO makes up 32.2% of my portfolio value, whereas SCHD makes up 10.8%, so combined these two ETFs are by far my largest positions. Following that, I have some individual stocks trailing them, with Booz Allen Hamilton and Google being the first and second largest individual positions. Now my allocation does change frequently as I buy new positions. Just a couple months ago, United Health, Texas Instruments, and S&P Global were far bigger than all my other individual positions. Before that, Apple was my largest individual holding for quite some time, even though I bought only a small amount of it. So right here, you can see that about $16,000 worth of my $50,000 portfolio value is made up of VOO, and $5,400 set aside to SCHD, with Booz Allen following that in $3,200. Now, of course, the unfortunate thing about Booz Allen Hamilton is I bought it for a higher price. If we scroll all the way to the right, we can see that my average price paid, or my cost basis, is $146 per share, but the current price sits at $136 per share, which is far lower. Now, I recently bought into the company on the dip, but I bought in a little early, and as the company kept dipping, I continued to buy more shares, but of course, my amount invested was already getting pretty high at $3,500, so I had to hit the brakes on that for a little bit. So some of my other big companies are Texas Instruments, United Health, and S&P Global, and then we have Apple right here and Microsoft following that. Now, the reason Apple and Microsoft both rank so high in terms of my position size is because their performance has been amazing since I purchased the companies. Microsoft is currently up 88.57%, including dividends being reinvested, and Apple is up 70%. Now, at these current prices, I am not buying any more of these two companies, but if they do dip down further, I might consider adding to these positions. Now, I'm not going to waste your time by going through every single portfolio holding in this video, but if you guys are interested in that and want to check it out, I'll leave that in the description of the video as well so you can watch it for yourselves. So in terms of size, at the bottom here, we actually have Tesla, and that's because I only own one share now after I sold 2 shares of Tesla, but it is up over 200%, so it's my best performing individual stock. Then we have 3M because I only bought 1 share of 3M, and then we have Ford because I recently sold this entire position. Now real quick, while we are here, we should be looking at these companies based on total return, because the total return has a lot to do with how much they've contributed to my gains in the portfolio. At number 1, Tesla has far outpaced each of these companies. I bought at $140 per share, and it currently sits at $426, which gives me a total return of 204%. Next, we have Amazon at 126%, and then Microsoft and Apple that we both talked about earlier. And just a quick shout out to PayPal. It has performed surprisingly well in 2024, and I hope it performs well in 2025 as well. Scrolling all the way down, we can see my worst performers, and some of my worst performers are just my newest holdings. Both Uber and Booz Allen Hamilton were bought recently. Booz Allen kept dipping, of course, so I'm down 6.75%, but Uber has actually gained in their past couple weeks, up 11%. Now, I want to increase my position in Uber if I have the opportunity to, but at these prices, I might just hold off on it. Next, we have United Health, and they didn't do so well in their most recent earnings report, which dipped their stock price once again, but they've also had a lot of controversies past year, and of course, with the CEO situation, it's not looking great for the company. Now, this is a strong company. I do have some faith in them in the long run, but we'll see how they perform. And wrapping up the bottom here, I don't think you guys are surprised by this. Intel is my worst performing company, and honestly, it's one of the worst performing companies in the market, at least in 2024. Now, I think that 2025 might be a good year for them. Maybe not the first half of the year, but towards the latter half of the year, I could see them changing around their stock price and turning it back around. I don't think they're going to make any big moves. I just think they're going to start losing less money per quarter. And before we end this video, let's just take a look at my monthly breakdown section. This is where I keep track of how much I invested each and every month and how much dividends I received each month. So the only time I purchased anything in 2020 was a lump sum purchase in October into VOO. Then in 2021, I only purchased stock on 2 different occasions, but in 2023, I started buying a little bit more consistently with some in most of the months. In 2023, I invested in all but 3 months, and in 2024, I invested in all but 4 months. Now, I still need to make a new section here for 2025, so once I get that going, we can cover that in a future video. As always, that does bring us to the end of today's video. I really hope you guys found it insightful taking a deep dive into my portfolio and seeing how I was able to hit my latest milestone, which was a $50,000 portfolio value. If you guys did make it this far into the video, comment down below what your portfolio value currently is and what your next goal is for your portfolio value. If you haven't yet checked out last week's video where I cover how I did in 2024 and I talk about my investing plan for 2025, check out this video right here. And if you instead want to check out my dividend income for the month of December, check out this video right here. Remember, the best time to invest was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. I want to thank every single one of you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.